I tell you, you can pray for anything, and if you believe that you've received it, it will be yours. Again, Mark 11:24. I tell you, you can pray for anything, and if you believe that you received it, it will be yours. So, whenever you think about the different Bible verses that talk about prayer, there are a lot of them that tell you, that talk about prayer, how to pray. And when you think about those and you encounter things in your life or things in friends' lives where you've prayed continuously for a long period of time, what would you say to someone that says that they've faithfully prayed for the same thing for over 10 years or 20 years in some cases, and nothing or the opposite of what they prayed for actually happens? So I'll start and tell you a little bit about something recent in my life, because my family did just that. For me, it was, I guess, around 10 years that I started praying, worrying, praying, crying, begging, screaming, hating, just all those reactions. And it wasn't until, and it kind of alone just with God in those struggles for many years. And it wasn't until like the last 2 or 3 years that the rest of my family understood where I was coming from and why I was feeling the way that I felt. So the night that I spent 16 hours in a substance abuse center trying to get my brother checked in was when it kind of finally all hit home with my family that there was a serious issue in our family. So then it became, my mom praying all the time to heal my brother, make things better for our family, but it didn't happen. It kept getting worse. It caused a lot of issues within my family. So then it's not only are we praying for my brother, we're praying for our family, for this war within our family to stop. And, our friends would pray, our churches, people in our churches prayed. Whenever I came to Columbia, we prayed for my brother while we were there. And then I got home and, coronavirus hits. We're kind of stranded away from each other. But my mom's church had started a Celebrate Recovery. And so my brother started going with my mom. And so, she thought things were getting better. But on March 29th, my brother took his last pill. And this tiny little pill, tiny, it took my brother's life. He died of a massive heart attack within hours. And so from that, after praying for 10 plus years for a fix for my brother to be healed, the pill took his life. My mother, needless to say, was devastated, but then the questions start. So, why? Is God not listening to my prayers? Has he not heard me begging? Has he not, heard me pleading to make this situation better? So mom just couldn't process it at all. So tonight, I want us to talk about unanswered prayers and how we feel about those, and how we should think about them, and are there things that we thought were unanswered that maybe we need to reassess our thought process with that. So the Bible talks about answered prayers. So we know, yes, we should pray because the Bible gives us evidence of answered prayers. So some of those are examples are Abraham, his intercession on behalf of Sodom in Genesis. There Abraham goes to God and pleads and says, he goes through these, if there's this many, and well, what if there's only 10 righteous people? Will you still destroy? And God answers with no. If there are at least 10 people, I won't destroy it. And Hezekiah's prayer for the extension of his life in Isaiah, the church's plea for Peter's release from prison in Acts 12. The church prays for Peter to be released from prison, and my abbreviated version is the angel walks in and says, "Hey, Peter, get up, grab those clothes, and let's go." And he walks out. So, those are just a few of the example of prayers that have been answered, that, we know that there is a need. We should be praying. But the Bible also gives us some examples of unanswered prayers. For example, when David prayed for the life of his and Bathsheba's child in 2 Samuel. And then Paul's repeated request for release from his thorn in the flesh in 2 Corinthians. Peter is a good example. He says that, 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. But he said to me, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in the weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weakness, so that Christ's power may rest on me." So Peter's a good example of, an unanswered prayer that, and maybe we should look at it a little bit differently, that it's not always going to be the answer we want it to be. So back to our verse, I've highlighted the word here, anything. So what did Jesus mean about anything? I mean, I've asked for something. In Mark, he made the promise to his disciples when they saw the fig tree and Jesus had cursed it and it had shriveled up. One of the men who heard Jesus's promise firsthand helps us understand that in 1 John 5:14. And this is the confidence that we have toward him, that if we ask for anything according to his will, he will hear us. So he kind of adds that layer into this verse in Mark. So I tell you, you can pray for anything. And if you believe that you received it, it will be yours. But our anything also has to be in accordance to God's will. So when we think about prayer and in what it means to us and what it means to God, prayer, we have to sometimes remind our kiddos that prayer he doesn't promise it to make him hit our butler or our genie to do whatever we ask for. He does it so that he can build a relationship. So prayer is based on that relationship that we create and we build, but not necessarily the results that we're pleading or asking for. So then we get to, are all of our unanswered prayers really unanswered? Or are they misunderstood answers? Or is he preparing you for more so you're having to wait? So these are the kind of the 2 categories that I want us to kind of talk about, if you are open to that, is, do you have prayers that you feel like have gone unanswered, or you feel like you've been told no? And then the other category is, are you in a waiting mode? Maybe he hasn't answered you because in this time of wait, he's preparing you for something else. Once my mom found my brother's Bible, she found different places that were marked that talked about God's healing. And it wasn't until then, I talked to Mom, she talked to her pastor, she talked to friends, and it didn't click until the day that she found his Bible and the markings of God's healing and how, God can heal you. And even though I had said these words, she finally understood it, that our prayers had been answered. Our ultimate healing comes whenever, we die, we're healed. My brother has been healed. He's no longer here. He's no longer struggling his day-to-day life. So it showed my mom a different way to look at these years of prayer that we've had, that we may not have gotten the answer that we had wanted or expected, but now we see that we were answered. My brother was answered. So is there anybody else that wants to share any unanswered prayers or want to talk about a prayer that maybe was misunderstood and you've since realized that you should have looked at it differently, and then you've been able to see God's glory through that?
I think mine is kind of similar to you. It was when what comes to my mind is when my mom was sick with cancer. And I remember, especially one night, I was at a retreat for college kids. And I just remember praying and just feeling like I was praying to nothing, and, couldn't understand why a woman who worked in the church her whole life, would be sick. And we had just adopted my little brother from Russia. And I mean, we had him about a year when my mom was diagnosed. So I just couldn't, things didn't make sense. And, but now I can see how God was working throughout that situation. But initially, those feelings that you're talking about, that's what I think about, is that when I would pray when my mom was sick.
Anybody else? Or what about a time, and you may be in a waiting period now. I'd actually told Patrick earlier that I felt like I had kind of gotten stuck because I hadn't done something that I feel like I was already supposed to do. But I know there's been plenty of times where I've prayed and I've prayed and I've said, I know this, but it's just not falling in line. And, later I see that, well, that's because I wasn't prepared. I still had other pieces that needed to develop in my life to fully answer, or that before he could answer my prayer.
We have been praying for a couple months now for my mom to come back she's in Miami right now, and they keep canceling her flights. So that kind of stresses us out when that happens, because
happened again.
Yeah, it happened again this weekend. So, and we really missed her and everything, but I also have to remember that we keep praying and we will continue to keep praying, but it's not going to be in our time, it's going to be in his time. So I know that that she will be able to come back, and I know that he's preparing us and her for it. But waiting, it does kind of stress out sometimes, but I know that we have to be patient with that, and that it's going to be in his time, and like the perfect moment.
Waiting is very hard at times.
Yes, it's like that. In my case, when I saw the slide, and I totally identify with it. I think that sometimes we feel in the three sentences. Sometimes we feel like misunderstood. Other times we feel that we don't receive any answer, and other times is we feel that we are preparing, right? In my case, for example, some time ago, a few months ago, I I happen to say, I was forced. I don't know if it's fine to say that, but I was forced to be in a job that I didn't feel totally good, right? By but the economic circumstances and other kind of things forced me to be there. In that time, I prayed too much to God, asking for what happened with this thing. Please, God, help me to be in another place. I don't understand why are you putting me here? And I prayed too much, too much, too much. And in one moment, I feel that my prayer was not understood by God, right? And I still praying, 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 and but I didn't find answer. Finally, time later, I received a new for a new job. And when I saw to the past, I understand. Only in that moment I understand that God was preparing me for that new position, right? Sometimes with my wife, I for example tell her when we are living something bad or something, some proof like you put in the slide. Um, I tell her, beauty girl, we cannot understand the situation right now. We try to understand what happened. We try to understand why. We try to understand why us, but in that moment, it's very hard to understand the answer. Uh, that I say here now is, beauty girl, we need to how can to say, we need to still here, still praying, still asking God, and in the moment, in the right moment, uh, in the right moment, God will give us the answer or the action to change that situation.
Right. Anybody else? So, with our unanswered prayers or our prayers that are misunderstood, I think a lot of times we can get too um, focused on the negative impact that sometimes we miss how God can be glorified in our circumstance. So, it's hard sometimes to pull back and say, I really need to step out of my negative situation. But each of you have shown how, in the examples that you gave, you've been able to see that. But I think, if we take the time, we can see something and find something in the no's, in the wait, in the what we classify as unanswered prayer. That at some point, we'll see God's glory, even in the no. One that that you have those where, in our case right now, we have another situation where one of the daughters, I'm sure, prayed really hard that she would marry her boyfriend. And our prayer was the opposite of that. We didn't feel that he was right. And please don't take my laughter. It's just that she would kill me if she knew I was saying this right now. But, our prayers were opposite of that. We knew that he was not the person that God had intended for her. So her no was our yes. And so, sometimes it's a struggle within families or friendships or things like that to kind of see that the no's are sometimes a yes for someone else or a blessing in disguise. So, just so that we don't kind of end on all these no's, does anybody want to share a yes? this happened. This was a miracle, or, an answered prayer that, we really studied on or prayed for a long time, or even if it was short, just something good that came out of your prayer life.
The past couple of weeks, we here in like my family and also here in the English devotional, we've been praying for my process of getting into college and my tests and everything. And I got in, and it was, really exciting. And yes, thank you. So it was really just like the best feeling knowing that God had answered that prayer, that, this is my future. So yeah, it just felt really nice to know that he was, listening and helping, and that prayer got answered.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Rebecca, and happy
birthday.
belated birthday.
Thank you.
Well, for me, soon as we came home from our mission trip to Colombia in 2013, 12? I think it was 2013.
Long time ago.
14. No, 13.
13.
We both felt called to do missions, and it was like soon as we started talking about it and praying about it, things just started happening, and it started happening fast. And it was just very clear and very quickly shown that that was something that God wanted us to do, and answered all of we're like, if this is what you want us to do, make it very clear. And it was so clear. That's what we needed to do.
And it's probably good that it happened fast, because we didn't have so much time to doubt. It happened that way, and both of our personalities. If we had 5 years to think about it, I don't know what would happen,
You would have overanalyzed it, right?
Yeah.
For sure.
But it makes you feel good when all of those things just kind of line up. For those of you that they may have shared this previously, but when our mission trip happened, it was like everything just flowed with, getting passports, getting through the airport, our travel, and then getting back, just everything was just so smooth. And it was like, yes, that was definitely meant to be. And then we got home and Corona hit. We still haven't figured out kind of but anyway, the placement of where coronavirus landed with our return home, but we'll get there one day. We'll understand it one day.
Well, one positive for us in Colombia, for everyone in Colombia, in our area, is starting September 1st, things are going to start opening up. They finally, even right now where we live, you can go to some restaurants as of just this week, like 2 days ago. So finally, things are starting to open up a little bit slowly. And for the next 4 weeks, they have a list of things that are going to open up. And if things are okay, they'll just continue to open up. So that's a positive answered prayer.
Definitely. I'm sure the girls will be just glad to go outside.
Yeah.
To go outside.
Yeah, we don't really care much about the restaurants and stuff. We just want to go on a long walk. That's what we want to do, is go on a long walk.
Yes. Whenever people complain here, I just tell them, now look, the kids there they're in the house with you 24/7.
Yeah, the next answered prayer would be when they go to school and we have a break.
And it's safe. I don't want anything to happen and not be safe. I know that, it's going to be open. It doesn't mean things are just safe. But
in his time.
having the option is nice.
I have one that we classify as kind of a miracle prayer. One of my very best friends was run over by a car when she was jogging, and it was on a Wednesday, right when church would have started. And so her daughter called, and so several churches started praying, and the car that hit her was going somewhere between 45 and 55 miles an hour. And so she was airlifted to the hospital, and she came home in 3 days. And the state trooper, the police officer, came to the house to check on her and said that she shouldn't have, they didn't expect her to even be alive. So she was hit by a car at, 45, 55 miles an hour, and had a little bit of road rash on her leg and a cut on her elbow. And that's it. God picked her up and placed her because when she was thrown, she landed between two metal objects. And if she would have been, pretty much a foot either direction, it would have been a completely different story. The emergency crew that showed up, she was so disoriented that she was going to like walk home and get her husband to like drive her to the hospital. She had no idea, what really was going on. She didn't want to get on the helicopter, and so she just asked them, "Will you stop and pray with me?" And so they prayed with her. They called the churches, all started praying for her. Friends and family, are all praying. When she got to the hospital, they kind of things, they started doing tests, and they'd come back and they'd want to test more because, by the time she'd gotten there, God's protection and his healing, they found nothing wrong with her. So bandaged up that elbow and sent her on home. So that's our little miracle. She doesn't talk about as much as she should. Like, I think that should be like, hey, I am a miracle. So anybody else want to share? All right. Well, if nothing else, do we have time for music, or do we need to pray and go, Patrick?
I think we'll pray and end our time. Do you feel like praying for us?
I can, or if you want to, do we have any specific requests that we need to add tonight?
I know that Luce, you remember Luce? She's the one that prayed with you. Her mom, well, last week her grandmother passed away. Her grandmother raised her and was almost 101 years old. And then today her mom had cancer surgery and it went well. So that's a praise. There's a few other health things from our church here that we've been praying for. Anybody else have any prayer requests that Jennifer can get home as soon as possible, right? Maybe with things opening up, she'll be able to get home soon. I know that process is frustrating. Anybody else have prayer requests? Okay. Nicole, do you want to pray or you want me to pray?
If you will, that'll be good.
Okay, let's pray. God, we give you thanks for this evening once again. God, we give you thanks for the message that Nicole brought us. We're so thankful that we have scripture and stories and examples that we can see and real life examples that we hear when we discuss in a group like this. God, we understand that our prayers are answered, and we understand that sometimes we have to wait longer than what we want to see the answer, or that sometimes we don't like the answer that we see. And God, I just pray that you help us learn how to pray better, how to focus more on the relationship part of our praying. God, when we need patience, give us patience. When we need clarity so that we can see how you're working, give us clarity. Ultimately, God, we just ask that you help us be more faithful, that you help us know how to be a better follower of you, a better believer in you, and how to be a better servant for you. We love you and we praise you in Christ's name. Amen. Nicole, thank you so much for this evening. Thank you so much for being honest and candid with your stories. And I really think it was a great topic and something that we all need to hear that maybe we don't talk about so much in church. The idea that maybe we won't hear what we want to when we're praying, or it takes a while because we're not patient people usually. So thank you so much for this. Remember everyone that next week at 7:30 we will be here again, and we will continue the Bible study virtually, at least for the next couple weeks. And if things open up, the plan is that we'll do virtually once a month. The idea was that we would do it like this until the quarantine in Colombia was over. So we'll see you next week, everyone. And Nicole, thank you so much.
Thank you, Nicole.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Okay, bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.